right. Well, welcome to our Christmas service. Wasn't the band great? Aren't these guys great? Yeah, they put a lot into this. So here's where I want to start tonight, all right? Pretty easy question. Is there anyone here who likes to get Christmas presents? Anybody? Anybody? All right. Any kids like to get Christmas presents? Yeah? Okay, so is there anyone who likes to know what you're going to get before you get it? You know? Like you ask for something and you know it's just what you're going to get. Maybe your significant other gets you that. You know, at first, like I wasn't really into it. Now I understand. It's practical, right? Like, especially if it's coming from my wife. We share the same bank account, you know, and so, and when she tells me what she wants, exactly, it's great. It's an easy win. It's a layup, you know. You can't really get that wrong. Maybe you can. For me, like, while I understand the practicality of that, I also really like the anticipation of just not knowing. And the anticipation, I think, is really in the shape of the package, right? Like, it's exciting. When you don't know what is in a package because it's some crazy shape, that's to me, there's like a lot of thrill behind that. The anticipation is really cool. Like, I used to get a lot of basketballs, you know, and that's pretty easy. You got like the little corners and then the bulge. You're like, okay, it's some kind of ball, right? Like maybe you get a shoe box and you're like, okay, or like something small, you know, it's jewelry, right? The anticipation of the shape, there's a lot that goes into that. It's like kind of like a science. But I remember growing up, the greatest shape that there was, the one that we looked for every Christmas morning, the one that we got the most excited about, my brother and I, that we got the most excited about, it looked like this. In here, depending on what year it was some kind of game, right? Could have been PlayStation 2, right? Or like Xbox 360 or 1 or play whatever they're up to now, right? Some Madden or NBA 2K. Like, so we would always get so excited. And so this was the shape that we looked for. It was fantastic. It was just the best when we saw those little, you know, the ones we went for right away. But then there was this other shape. All right? And now, like, I don't want to sound ungrateful. But you ever get a gift like this? Anybody know what's in here? Clothes. Clothes. And like I said, I don't want to sound ungrateful, but this was like the emotional equivalent to getting, like, vitamins, right? There's just, okay, there's some benefit here, but you know, and so then I'd open the present and be like, okay, all right, you know, and my parents would be like, oh, you want to try that on? I'd be like, I want to, but I don't want to hold everything up here, you know? And so like Ralphie, you know, in the little pink bunny rabbit when his mom makes him try it. Yeah. So there just like wasn't really that much excitement. And I remember one year for Christmas, I have an aunt who has always like come up big with these kinds of boxes. Like every Christmas she would give my brother and I one of these. I don't know, it's like she had some connections with Santa Claus or something. She always got the thing that we wanted, and it was amazing. And so we had kind of come to expect, like, which one are we gonna get this year? And I remember one year, we got to her house, it was time to do the presents, we're all excited, and she comes out with two of these, one for me and one for my brother. And she says, here, I got you a shirt. It's like, okay. You know, and so I take it, and now I was about 12 or 13 at this point, and I kind of felt like maybe something fishy was going on. You know, just trying to pull a fast one. Plus, there was a lot of sliding going on inside this box, and turns out, you know, I open it up, and it's one of these inside one of these, right? Just being funny. But the best part was my brother. Now, at this point, he's about 7 or 8 years old. And I look over at him, and he's just staring at the box, and he won't touch it. And he's flustered, you know, his cheeks are red. He's doing like a lot of blinking, and, you know, like which was, for the most part, he's a pretty good kid, you know. He's still a pretty nice guy. And he's just like really thrown off by this. So for me, as his older brother, this was the greatest thing in the world to watch him go through this torment. I'm like, what's the matter? You don't want a shirt? You know, this isn't okay with you? and he's just sitting there. He's not really saying much. What was amazing about this whole thing, though, or what was funny, I think, about this whole thing is that really, like, what he wanted was right in front of him, right? What he wanted most was right there, but he didn't even want to touch it because the package that it came in had disappointed him so many times before, right? He had gotten clothes so many times before that he was like, I don't even want to touch that. And so eventually we told him and we laughed and we had a good time. And for me, I look back on stories like that, you know, things like I'll never forget. Those kinds of memories, for me, they're really like the best part of Christmas. Or the best parts of Christmas, right? There are these things, when I think about what I love about Christmas, there are these things that stick out, like the joy of the whole gift exchange process. That's exciting, being able to give things to people and receive things from people, no matter what box it's in, right? Or like maybe for you, it's like peace. Peace. You know, the world's kind of crazy. There's a lot going on. And maybe for you, like at the holiday, Christmas, at some point, my guess is there's at least a moment, maybe, hopefully an hour, but maybe even just a moment where it's like, it's Christmas, you know, and you kind of shut off the noise. And there's like peace in that. Or maybe hope. Like maybe you've driven through the village and you see the light posts, the lamp posts, like all wrapped in lights. And it's just this feeling of anticipation, of hope. Then there's that Saturday morning where you hear the sirens, and after like 15 minutes, you're like, is the whole town burning down? Because those sirens have been going on for so. But then you remember, oh no, it's December. Santa is on the fire truck, littering the streets with candy canes, right? And it's like, oh, this feeling of hope or love when you're with the people you love. Like for me, those things are the best part of Christmas. Those are the things I'll never forget. Those memories. But then there was this other part of Christmas that showed up every year. The church part of Christmas. And while I would have never said it back then, really church for me was the boring part of Christmas. It was not the part that I liked. It was kind of like, it felt like a tax, like the Christmas tax. Like if you're gonna have all that fun with all the, gifts and the music and the movies, well, you at least gotta make your way over to church to like pay your dues because this is the reason for the season, And so you like, at least when I was going, it was like, we gotta do that. We gotta go to church. And so what would happen? Well, I'd have to get like dressed up, which was the worst thing, because like you couldn't wear jeans to church, obviously. And then, it was like we would all be together having a good time, and then you have to put a stop to it, and we've got to get out there. And then we'd sit in the church, and I'd hear the same story. And if I'm honest, when I was a kid, it was like really not something I was super into. And it's the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, the do's and the don'ts. And it wasn't really ever something that I looked forward to. I remember one year we were doing our little Christmas celebration with my cousins, and we had finished, and my mom stayed back. We were all going to church, and she stayed back and washed dishes. And so she didn't go. And I just remember thinking, like, you're not going to church? That's not fair. Like, how come you get to stay home and we have to go? It was the only time in my life I've ever been jealous of someone who was washing dishes, right? And so for me, it was something I felt like I had to do. It was a have to. Everything else about Christmas, it was the get to. Like this was the have to. And then when I got a little older, I read part of the Christmas story that just jumped out at me. Even to this day, it's probably my favorite line in the story. But at the time, it just made no sense. The scene, maybe you've heard it before, the scene is like there's this angel, and they're announcing to these shepherds that Jesus has been born. Like the reason for the season, the whole thing is about to start with Jesus. And the shepherds, if you don't know, the shepherds were not like the church people. They weren't the religious people. They were outcasts in the community because they couldn't make it to any of the religious events. And so there's this message delivered to them, and this is the thing that didn't quite line up with my experience. They're told, they say, I bring you good news. Like good news. Not just in theory, but actual good news. You ever get good news? And it's so good that it will cause great joy. Great joy. Not like it's going to be something that we value or it's something important or something that you really shouldn't forget about, but good news that will cause great joy. For like the hyper spiritual churchgoers, like the people that do all the right things. No, it's good news of great joy for all the people. And I remember reading that and being like, really? Like that doesn't line up. That if that statement is what summarizes the whole church, God, Jesus part of the Christmas experience, that doesn't line up with what I know. And so at this point in my life, I was a little older, a little more analytical, like really wanted to wrestle through some of these things and started asking these questions, like what if this really is true? What if there is something to this? Then what that means for me is that maybe there's something that I've misunderstood. Or maybe the misunderstanding partially is because the version of Christianity, church, that was presented to me, maybe like has drifted a little bit from the original version that Jesus presented to the world, right? And what if the truth is better than I understood it to be? So I started wrestling with that and dug a little bit deeper into what Jesus himself said, right? Like this is baby Jesus being born. Well, Jesus grew up and he said some things and we have them written down. And he said like a few times, he kind of summarized what he was doing. He said, look, I have come that they would have life and life to the full, which was another thing that didn't line up with what I had experienced. He said, like to his followers, he said, when all of what I'm doing clicks, you will have joy, and no one will be able to take that. Joy. He said that like the stuff that he was saying so that we would have peace. Peace, like real peace. Not like a quick moment of peace, but when everything crazy, like when the world around us is falling apart, and for them it was in this ancient world at times, like you could have internal calm in the storm. Joy, peace. He talked about hope. If you were here 2 weeks ago, you remember we talked about hope, how it's like an anchor. It's an anchor, not just hope that like maybe good things will happen or that Santa's gonna come around the block littering in the streets with candy canes, or hope that but hope that there's someone working behind the scenes. That this is part of a bigger story, real hope. And what he said was like, this whole thing, the whole thing really is about love. It would start with his love for us. Like what would be explained later is that the whole idea of Jesus on a cross was to demonstrate just how far he would go to prove his love for people. And out of that, like knowing that we are loved just as we are in our brokenness with our issues and our doubts and our failures and after our biggest mistakes, knowing that love doesn't change, like that love can overflow out of us. And so here I am, right, backing up a little bit, like, so really Jesus came to give joy, not just the joy of opening presents, but real joy, hope. Hope, not just in like hopeful things, good things happening, but an anchor. Peace in a crazy world at crazy times. And love over all of it. It's like my favorite things about Christmas. In fact, Jesus might say, if he were talking to me with my issues, he might say that really, the best parts of Christmas are actually found in what we have come to know as the boring part of Christmas. Maybe there's more to it than this. And so my question for you, really what I want to leave you with this Christmas season, is the same question I was faced with. Like, well, what if it's true? What if the concept of God and the church and Christianity, like what your working understanding of it right now, what if maybe it's been a little misrepresented to you? And maybe it's rooted in a little bit of a misunderstanding. I think personally, if you go to this church, you know, you've heard me say this before, I think the biggest issue we have in this part of the country is this caricature of God. Like he's some angry, rule-giving dictator who just wants us to do what he says because he's big and we're small. That's like the average concept of God, and that's like totally inaccurate. And so maybe, what if for you, it's better? What if it's better? Jesus, like one of my favorite things about the way he taught, often people asked him for explanations, and instead he gave them invitations. And so he would just say, like, come and see. Come and see. You're wondering if there's anything to this? Just come and see. Like, I don't need your money. I don't need you to sign up. I don't need you to join. Just come and see. And see. And so that's what I would present to you this Christmas season. Like maybe there's more to it. And we don't want you to sign up. We don't, you don't have to give us your information. You don't have to give us any money. You don't have to like sign any document. But what if like this year, we're looking at the calendar, what we're going to talk about over the next 12 months. We're going to talk a lot about peace. Like that internal peace. You know why? Because we need it in all the uncertainty of life right now. And so if you want to know if there's something to this, what if you just come and see? Come and see. Maybe somebody like dragged you here today, like forced you, like you gotta come. It's Christmas Eve, you gotta come. Or it's almost Christmas Eve, right? You gotta come. And you're like, you know what? No, I don't want to be part of it. The church has let me down like too many times before. I've been disappointed by organized religion too many times before. Like, what I would suggest to you, what if what you want most, joy, life to the full, peace, hope, love, what if what you want most is right in front of you, but you won't touch it because it's in a package that has disappointed you so many times before? What if it's better? What if it's better?